Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you've been having a good week. I am doing well, but it has been very busy this week for me. Uh, House stuff and job stuff and all of those things going on. With that, I'm going to jump right into the topic this week because I got a little irritated at a few related things this week, and it just fit right together and made for a what I thought was a perfect topic for today. So let me get into it. Twice this week, I saw a topic of discussion come up that it told me that we still have a really long way to go with many people on our side of the field who just are not right, in the right place. Now, I'm not talking about the Elon Musk purchase of Twitter, although that has been a fun topic, and if everyone was not so distracted by it and conversing about it, everybody's talking about that, and I might feel like I should comment on it, but I think the topic has already been worn out a little bit and played out. And I like to do things, a little bit off the beaten path and kind of different ways to look at things and things that other people haven't necessarily, worked to death. So, what I'm talking about is a discussion that I had on Gab and a more important topic that was posted over on the mothership this week. So, first, let me get into the discussion on Gab because it wasn't really anything to get bent out of shape over. It was an eye roller. It was just something that kind of started me off and kind of put me in this mindset. And then I saw the later post on WRSA. But anyway, the discussion involved myself and some others, but primarily it was between me and a guy from Germany. And now this guy was an experienced and very intelligent guy. I'm not questioning that about him at all. I don't question his bona fides. He said he made the claim that he knew this information and that he was who he said he was. And I believed him. I don't, like I said, I don't have any reason to question what he was saying. I believe he surely knew a lot of information about the topic at hand. But in fact, that is kind of what I believe was the problem. Now let me elaborate without going really into the weeds on this because, like I said, it was not really important. It was the larger implication that I found interesting, the takeaway that I found more interesting. And we were discussing NATO sending more sophisticated weapon systems to Ukraine, and this individual asserted that for one of these systems that he had trained on it, and that the training took at least 12 months and that it was worthless to send them to the Ukrainians. Now again, I'm not questioning his background on this, at least in terms of what he knows, but there's one thing that I did question. My response was that he was assuming that the Ukrainians were going to train their people to be at the same level that he was. And that's not in evidence, okay? And my response was based on the idea that the Ukrainians were likely not going to utilize the full capability of this system and would be putting it into roles it was not even necessarily designed for, what it was intended for. In other words, they had no need to train to the same level that his background showed, that what he was doing. Well, he lit into me and the conversation kind of devolved from there. So, and it quickly ended. I just said, I don't have time to deal with people like that. So, but anyway, it was just an eye roller. Like I said, you just move on. But the takeaway from the conversation stuck with me. And so fast forward to yesterday, when I'm going through the post over on the mothership and I see that Concerned American has posted a response from ASOP on an article that CA had linked to the day before. And that article was a piece about medical tasks and the focus of the guerrilla medic or the partisan medic. And in the article, the author had listed this short number of bullet points that were the primary tasks of the partisan medic, and one of those was to maintain contact with a higher level guerrilla hospital. Well, ASOP had a quibble with this bullet point. Now, Again, I'm not questioning the subject matter expertise on either the author of the original piece or Aesop. I have no reason, nor do I have the knowledge base to do that. My small amount of medical training amounts to not much more than, keep the red liquid inside of the body in sufficient quantities, and that's about it. So I wanted to make that clear up front. This isn't really a conversation about the ins and outs of medical treatment. Aesop, in his ever unique way, had a rub with the idea that one of these tasks would be to keep contact with a higher level gorilla hospital. And he proceeded to write a whole piece about, why that sounds stupid since we don't have a higher level gorilla hospital. And he laid out a whole list of reasons why they are, such a major hurdle, to get over, to set up, and to operate. And because of that, it's dumb to talk about keeping in contact or in coordination with this mythical location. So, again, this is another situation that I believe that people who are very intelligent and very invested in their expertise, and they let it color or kind of cloud their common sense. In both of these situations, I think that we're dealing with people who are measuring the situation with a measuring stick that is calibrated to best case scenario. In the middle of a war, either an invasion by another country or an internal civil conflict, the situation is not best case. It's worst case. It's not even nominal case, right? It's the worst case scenario all the time. It's a time of minimums and substandard. It's a time of austere resources and skill levels. It's a time of you do what you have to do with what you have to do it with. And if that means that you get access to, a weapon system that you have no idea how to properly employ, but it gives you more ability than you had before, even though you're just barely getting any capability out of it, well, it's better than you had before. And if you live long enough and get long enough time to work with it, you might figure out how to better use it. But you're getting on-the-job training, in a job that is highly dynamic, and mistakes are without a doubt going to get you or others dead. And that is just the reality of the situation. You take what you can get. If it means that you have to pick up your most experienced medical person and put them in a place where you can consolidate as much of your medical gear and supplies at, and that place de facto becomes the hospital, that's fine. And if it really amounts to nothing more than a stationary ambulance that you put people who you can basically just comfort them and keep them company while they recover on their own or they pass on, well, that's what you have, and that's what you have to deal with. It still seems that, your field medics will need to keep contact with that location, and so they can bring people to it. Even if it's just a place where you put people and you keep them comfortable and you let their families come say goodbye to them, that's still a hospital, okay? And it's the most medieval version of that word, but it is what it is. And you have to have training for, or at least a concept of operation of how to coordinate with that, okay? When you're a medic and you're training for that. And that was the point of the original article on the partisan medic. Is the capability or constitution of the partisan hospital was outside of the scope of that piece. That's not what they were talking about. It was, here are the tasks. This is what you should be focused on. These are the things that you're doing. And one of those tasks would be to coordinate with some type of higher level care, whatever that may be. But whatever that is outside of your control and outside of the scope of the document. In both of these situations, we have people making very valid points, and there's utility in them making these points, which I'll get back to here in a second. But the issue is that these points just completely ignore that reality in these scenarios we're discussing is never perfect. This is the textbook version of the expression, the perfect is the enemy of good enough. And we're very rarely going to get anything approaching peacetime conditions during a conflict, and that's the reason that we distinguish between peacetime and wartime, right? Now, like I said, there's utility in making the points, like Aesop making these points. So let me get back to that. I think he realized that he might have been a little too caustic with his original post, because today he made another piece and posted it up, calling it a wake up call that everybody needs to wake up, that we don't have these capabilities, and here's how complex it is to kind of build these. And he was a bit less acidic about it, and so. Pointing out that we don't have a high-level hospital to care for casualties is very valid. It gets people considering that point, and it makes them recognize that the situation will require, resources and skills that need to be developed. So that's the good side of it. I just think that to borrow the medical term, the bedside manner in which it was done was what was lacking there, and it was just ignoring this. Sometimes you get what you get, In terms of a guerrilla hospital, just mentioning it in the original article was probably enough to make people think about the very fact that that portion of that chain of care is missing. What constitutes a hospital? At a minimum, it's a large room that sick and wounded people are put into a bed so that someone else can care for them. And that can be almost anywhere in the country, almost anywhere. It gets better and better the more skills and resources you can add to it. But at a minimum, that's what it is. And is that ideal? Well, hell no, it's not. No one is suggesting that it is. But it beats, dying in a field laying under a tarp in the rain, okay? If you get wounded and somebody can take you to, Farmer John's barn and lay you up and keep you dry and bring your wife to you to say goodbye to you, well, that's certainly better than just you face down in a ditch somewhere, okay? The whole point, like I said, was those are considerations that a field medic needs to be thinking about and considering. How do you make that transfer of patient from the field to that location, whatever it is? And the problem that I had with these responses in both cases was it implied that you can't achieve this high, if you can't achieve this higher level of skill and get these expertise, then it just kind of suggested that it was futile to even attempt to go down that path. And my counter to this is that the path is pushing you down it, and you don't really have a choice. You'll build some level of skill or some means of dealing with these issues, or you'll fail, you'll die, or your whole thing falls apart, your whole resistance falls apart, or your whole military falls apart, whatever. Now, in training, it's popular to say that first we must crawl, and then we walk, and then we run. And in the case of the combat medic, the crawl is the buddy aid that everyone in your team learns, and the walking is that combat medic, and the running is that secondary or higher level care. If we're starting with next to nothing, then the last phase of the path is that higher level care. And that means, that may be something that is outside of our capability. So, our group, we may not have the ability to put that together. So we might reach out and shop for it, so to speak. We go to other groups or other people, and maybe that's something that creates an opportunity for one group to contact with and train with another group. So there is a huge benefit in trying to tackle that task, tackle that deficiency. It's important to recognize and point out, but it's no reason to stop moving forward with your planning and your training, And I hope that Aesop wasn't trying to suggest that. It just really came off that way in his piece. So to me, both of these situations told me that we have too many people who are just stuck in this box of the world as it currently is and not recognizing the reality of what it's likely to be. And I see this very much with a certain group of people. They're high-level thinkers and generally very smart, but they tend to become very focused on measuring things by a standard that is not applicable in all cases. To be quite frank, my wife does this a lot. But What I worry about, or at least it's concerning to me, is that when faced with these austere situations, that many people like this are going to shut down. And I don't necessarily mean that mentally, like they're going to go into some kind of stupor or drooling, mess or something like that. They're going to be faced with a wall that because they're very demanding on themselves. And I think that's kind of the genesis of a lot of this is that people who have a lot of self-drive, a lot of initiative, and a lot of focus on their own performance and how they measure themselves are really vulnerable to this. Really, they show this tendency. They're always driving for perfection, and if they run into a situation that doesn't allow them to reach that perfection, and ultimately they conclude that it's not worth doing at all. So they just simply stop utilizing their skills. It's like, well, to heck with it. I'm a medic or I'm a doctor, but I can't operate under conditions like this, so I'm just not going to do things. That's very concerning to me because I think that our side is very much counting on smart people to be in play and to be the game changers, to be the upper hand that we're going to have. And we can't afford to have a bunch of them just shut down and go into, cruise control because they can't achieve perfection. Perfection is the enemy of good enough. And in the case of conflict, the good enough more often rules the day. Short show today. Like I said, I've been very busy, but tell me what you guys think. Like and subscribe, comment over on Gab or in the comments section of the video. That's all I got time for today, so I will see you on the next episode.